Hi guys! So today we will be doing some sculpting. I've got two tools I'll be using today. One is flat at the end and pointed at the other, and this one will be for little details. And the other one has two stubby round ends that I can smooth the clay with. So we're going to be sculpting a snail today. So I'm combining a yellow ochre sort of colour and a natural brown to make both the foot of my snail and its shell. Now to combine the colours, I take a piece of each colour and squish them together. Then using my hands to roll the clay between, I keep folding it and smushing it all together until it's well combined. You might keep folding it, or you might squish it all together again, or like I'm doing, I just kind of rip it up and then squish it back together and then rip it up and squish it back together. Can you see how different the colour is to the two colours I started out with? So I'm going to do exactly the same again, but this time I'm going to make a darker colour. So which colour do you think I'll use more of? Yep, I'll use more of the brown, because that is the darker colour. I'm also not going to mix these colours as much, because I like the effect it has when you mix the clay together, and it looks like the design of the snail shell. So can you see what I mean by the design of the snail shell? So now I'm going to sculpt the snail foot. I start by making the triangular shape of the whole foot, using my two fingers to squish the triangle shape and make it nice and pointy at the end. I also noticed that snails have a sort of ridge that sticks out halfway up their body, so I'm using the side of my finger to sculpt in that ridge. And also to make the little feelers that they have at the bottom, I just pinch a tiny area of the clay at the front, and then I pinch it in loads of different directions to make it nice and round, and do that twice for each of the feelers. So most snails have a tongue called a radula that has lots of tiny little teeth on it. And instead of eating their food, they rip it up into tiny little pieces so they can swallow it. So now, to sculpt the antennae, I take a small piece of the clay and split it into two. Then rolling it in my palm, I roll it into a thin sausage shape. To attach it to the snail foot, I place it where I want it, and pat it down, and then using my blending tool, or you can use your finger, I drag the clay from the antennae shape onto the clay of the snail, all around it, and then I soften the area with my finger. I also, very gently, squish the top of the antenna for the eye. Then I do exactly the same with the other side. So now if you look at your sculpture and you think, actually it's looking a bit rough, use your finger to smooth down the edges. But you've got to be careful. You don't want to press it too hard and move the shapes out of place. Be very careful. And now we'll move on to the shell. I roll it into a nice ball into the palm of my hands first, and then I mould it just a little bit more into a sort of shell shape. I do this by making one side of it just a little bit thinner. Then taking one of my tools, I sculpt in the curly circular shape carved into the shell. I first use my really thin pointed end of one of my tools to draw it in, and then use the thicker tool to make the lines a bit bigger all the way around it. And then lastly, I use my finger to smooth it all down and add in any other little finishing touches. So, some snails can get really, really big, but did you know which type of land snail is the biggest? So the largest land snail is the giant African land snail. And some cool facts for you: when snails feel threatened, they retreat into their shells to protect themselves. And they might also produce a foamy, bubbly liquid to protect themselves even more. Have you ever picked up a snail and seen them do this? So when I added this shell to my snail, I realised that my snail's foot was a bit too big, so I had to change it up a little. Oops. So I chop off some of the face, some of the tail, and the antennae, and make it a little bit smaller. And then I do exactly as I did before, and shape all the different areas. But to do the antennae this time, like I did the feelers, I pinch the clay that sticks out all around the area to make it a cylindrical shape. And don't forget to poke the very top of it to make that eye. Do you know how slowly a snail moves every second? I'm sure you could guess. In 1 second, a snail can move up to 0.5 to 0.8 inches. That means it would take them more than 1 whole week to travel a kilometre. So now that the snail is complete, I've just got to mush those 2 bits together. So I just place it on top, and then I squish the area that follows around the shell to make sure that it binds tightly together. Now, for a little information about what you should not do with snails. Please, please, please do not put salt on them, or they will die. Their bodies can't process it. They're one of my favourite animals, so please don't do that. Believe it or not, I find snails very, very cute. Do you? If not, what's your favourite, but maybe strange animal? And there we have it. My little snail is all finished. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I cannot wait to see your creations. If you like these videos, please do subscribe, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!